Are we live? All right. I will call the Plan Commission meeting to order on July 26th, 2023 at 7:03. Please all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, if we could have a roll call, please.
Okay, Commissioner Eicher,
Here.
Commissioner Cahalan, not here. Commissioner Hausman,
Here.
Commissioner Jaschinski,
Here.
Commissioner Merrick,
Here.
Commissioner Schultz,
Here.
Commissioner Weiler,
Here.
and Mayor Atwell.
En route, apparently.
Thank you.
So I'm looking for a discussion and possible action on the last meeting's minutes for June 28th.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Okay, minutes for June 28th are approved. So now, inviting any citizen comments for items on the consent agenda. So that's items 6A or B. Any citizens wish to comment on the consent agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Looking for a motion for the consent agenda, and this is relative to 2700 Gulf Road for signage and 524 Milwaukee Street, Hendricks Commercial Properties for another business plan of operation and permanent signage.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Is there any discussion on the consent agenda? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay, consent agenda is approved. So if you're here for items 6A or B, you can join us for the rest of the meeting, or you're approved and you can leave.
That's BMO Bank and Cowell Investment Group.
Okay, no public hearings. So is there any citizens' comments for any items other than things on the consent agenda? Anything at all? 3, 2, 1. Okay, we'll move on. So unfinished business. Item 9A, DELC 079999970001, 920 Indian Spring Drive. Owner, applicant Chris Poitrikis, requesting a site plan and appearance approval to extend the deadline to comply with all the conditions. Would you like to come up and just field any questions we may have? Which I guess there might be one or two. If you don't mind, state your name and address so we can get rolling.
Chris Patrikis, 920 Indian Spring Drive.
Turn your mic on.
There you go.
I'm Paul Heading. Work for Piala's Nursery and Garden Shop in Waukesha.
Excuse me, Paul, can you spell your last name?
Heding.
Okay, and if you
And
would,
I'm sorry, your address again?
406 Karen Drive in North Prairie.
Thank you.
thanks. So Amy, you want to just give us an overview of what?
Sure. Okay, so Delafield Dental was here last month. We talked about their landscaping, lighting, and the dumpster enclosure. You had asked that he come back with the revised plan by the August meeting. He was able to turn it around right away, and so he's on this agenda. Scott did go out and verify that the lights were on a timer, correct, Scott? And they are.
Correct.
So that condition is enforceable, and we will manage that more so in the winter when it's noticeable than compared to now. The dumpster enclosure, Tim, if you go to page 28, he did show a colored rendering of what the dumpster enclosure will look like.
Sorry, okay.
Right there. So that dumpster enclosure will include a composite material, a brown color to match up with the building, and then they'll have a gate structure facing the parking lot. So that dumpster enclosure is not installed yet if you go out there, but they'll need to do that. And that should be part of your consideration tonight, is putting a deadline on when this stuff needs to be accomplished. Landscape plan, it's on page 27. I have a feeling you might not be able to read the text. Sometimes, for whatever reason, the PDF text doesn't come through on Laserfiche. I noticed that today. Maybe it's just my computer, because it looks...
Oh, it's a little tight, but
So what they did, they are now installing, so we talked about installing evergreen trees on the south side of the property would be preferred to even what they had in their original plan. They do have 12 trees shown on the south side. They do span the entire width of the property or most of the width. They are all evergreens. 2 of them are hemlocks. 10 of them are what are they called? Help me out here. Oh, star power junipers. So I put in my report that, and all the trees will be planted at a minimum of 6 feet tall, which gives them credit for 2.5 inches. So with the trees that are being proposed, they will meet the 30 inches of mitigation that was originally required. My original concern to them is that these junipers are a more narrow type tree, where some, native trees are going to get much bigger and wider and what have you. Pialas did respond, and you can go into it in more detail if you want, that the trees, evergreen trees that are on the protective tree list, many of them are susceptible to disease, and that this particular species they're proposing is more hardy to the deer and disease. So I guess the question is, the idea here is to screen as much as we can from the properties to the south. And so if it has a wider base at the bottom and that's what they'll see, that might be okay. Might be better than like a pine tree with a long trunk and then the greenery on top. There are some cedars out there that are going to get real thick at the bottom, or like the blue spruces and stuff, although blue spruces are dying all over the place. So that's something to just consider. But otherwise, the applicant did, complete what was asked in regards to planting the appropriate number of trees. The location seems to be good. The location of the trees are getting into that tree line a little bit, so they will need to cut buckthorn and low-growing species in order to plant them, but it's a pretty tight site otherwise. They've got their septic system and topography and what have you to work with. I think that's all I have to share. So it's up to your discretion, but what I would ask is that in addition to any conditions you may or may not want to add, to place a deadline on the plantings. I did stop out there before I came here today, and the property needs to get landscaped and cleaned up. The grass it's not all in. There's still a lot of dirt out there, and the area around the building is looking pretty rough. It needs to get cleaned up, and those plantings need to get in. And then when that's done, it'll look, quite nice. The other thing I did notice is you have some gravel areas in the parking lot, and I'm not sure, they're not shown on the original grading plan as being parking stalls. Are you doing something with that? You know what I'm talking about? There's the light pole on the upper lot, and then there's 2 gravel pads next to that light pole.
We had some people that had tried to park in that spot, and it was all muddy.
Okay.
So we put that area in, so it just wasn't it was retaining water. So we had just fill put in so it would be able to drain. We don't have a long-term plan for that area yet.
Okay. I mean, I guess for one, I'm not entirely opposed to them even expanding the parking area. They could use as much parking as they can get. And it almost looks like there's room for like 2 more cars then.
That'd be great if we could get that.
But they do have, they have a couple of gravel areas that weren't shown on the original plan.
It's pretty muddy right now, so like with all the dirt and not having been planted yet and all that, it's pretty messy.
So if you guys want to see what I'm talking about, unfortunately I don't have it on the screen, but I don't think it has a great impact on the site one way or another, but if it's going to stay like this, it should be paved, asphalted.
Yeah, that'd be helpful for us if we're able to do that.
I'm not quite sure, where is it?
It's in the upper lot where there's the light pole. There's just gravel on both sides. No, so they have parking along the whole edge.
Oh, is that south?
South is that way.
Yeah. So this
So that's
gravel
east.
is facing, it's facing east?
East, and
Because
they
I
have
know
parking. They have parking
Yeah.
along most of it.
Yeah.
And then this was going to be green space. And they put gravel, but it looks to me like it could just be 2 more parking stalls.
The only thing I would be concerned about would be lot line. Where's the lot line compared to that?
I can look at that. I mean, the rest of the parking lot goes up to that same point. I don't know why,
Yeah,
not really sure why it wasn't just parking to begin with, but
yeah.
Yeah, I was up there today too. We don't know why that gravel's there.
it was muddy, so they put gravel in.
We had
But it
people
was green
parking
space.
off the driveway, and actually when we put the driveway in, we had to do, I can't remember the term for it, but a lot of like a very large base on it. So whatever their initial plans were, everything below that was just very, very soft. And so they stopped right at the edge of the driveway, and then we had some people parking off of that area, and they just sunk right down into it. So we put some stone in there to stabilize it. But if we were able to make that more parking space, that would be helpful.
I don't think there's anything keeping them from doing that, is there?
I don't think so.
And you can use all the parking you can get up there, right?
Correct.
Are they adjacent to other parking stalls in
Yeah,
the
it's
same
right in
direction?
line. I think there's a tree or the light
Yeah.
pole's there.
There's a light pole that would interrupt it, but
And
basically
then
we
the
have-
parking could start
yeah.
immediately after the
Yep.
light pole. It's like 2 spots, maybe 3.
Exactly, yeah, so there's a spot of stone between the last stall and the light pole, and then a little bit after the light pole
Yeah.
to match up to the edge of where the driveway goes.
The area between the stall and the light pole might be a little narrow, but the other one, I think you probably could get 2 stalls. I can double check, make sure they're meeting impervious surface or, green space or open space, but other than that, I recommend it get asphalted and used because people are parking on Indian Mountain Road, right?
And if somebody hasn't mentioned it, your proposed garbage enclosure is beautiful, and I think we will use it as a best practice for others, so thank you.
Yep.
Do we have any idea when the start date's going to be on this?
We were just talking about that a little bit, and we wanted to confirm tonight to make sure we were on track to be able to get this going, and not that plans would change again, but if you could speak to that a little bit more.
So in the interest of establishing a good seed bed, I would suggest that this would be a fall project. Right now in this drought, without having irrigation in place, and the amount of area that we'd be seeding would be a heck of a draw on the water. So it would be a fall project once the weather cools off and gets to a little bit of a wetter weather pattern. Absolute worst case scenario, if that doesn't happen and we're not able to get into a wetter weather pattern, I would propose that it be a dormant seed project, that we would have it covered with erosion control mat for the entire winter through until we grow the following spring. This is typically the best way to approach soil cover in an area of this scale, is to grade it out, seed it, put down erosion control matting over the entire seeded area as opposed to just on the steep slopes.
Would all the trees and shrubs be planted then too?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Trees and shrubs that would be planted, all the mulch would be installed at the same time as a fall installation. Again, to give the plants the best shot of survival, it's not advisable to be planting in this type of weather. Of course, I work at a nursery and we can only plant so many months a year, so we are out planting this type of weather, but it's not in the best interest of our clients, in particular of a commercial client who maybe doesn't have the capacity to care for it in the same way as a residential client.
So if you're to be held to a deadline as far as from a calendar, I know you're not a weatherman, but what would you suggest as a date that would be reasonable to say it needs to be done by?
12/15.
Okay.
Motion to approve the Delafield Dental revised landscaping plan as presented this evening with allowance for additional parking in a gravel area and a deadline of 1/1/2024.
Dumpster?
Along with I said the plans as presented this evening, so.
Anything about the proposed gravel area being paved?
Yeah, I
Oh, you
said
oh, yeah, I'm
allowance
sorry.
for extending their parking.
Yeah, blacktop. You want it blacktop though, right?
Yeah, It'd be asphalt
So you
paving to
you meant
match what's
blacktop.
there today.
Okay.
All right, and just point of order, as I open the agenda item, I'll close it and then turn it over to Mayor Atwell after this.
Got it.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
Yes.
Yes.
I've thought about this a lot, and I looked it up, and this whole project started in October of 2021. And I feel that we could have done a lot better job of managing this. We're almost 2 years out, and the project still isn't complete. And it's not like a huge project. It's just an addition with some grading. Yes, there was a septic system in the parking lot. And I just feel that we could do a better job of managing stuff like this. And I believe that if I and my neighbor had not brought this forward, who knows how long this would have taken. So I think there needs to be better follow-up on some of these projects.
So Laura,
Especially-
Sounds more of a critique of the process as opposed to what we're trying to advance this particular agenda item, which is a good point, but
Right,
maybe
but
bring that up as a.
I feel that the city erred, and so did the development.
so can I just
Because-
explain how the process normally goes? The applicant is required to submit a letter of credit to the city, and we review and inspect until it's completed, and they don't get a full release of their letter of credit until it's complete. So the landscaping is still outstanding. If you want the timing to go more quickly on projects, then it should be the Plan Commission that puts a deadline on the completion of the project. You could say the project has to be completed within 2 years, but right now, there really isn't a deadline on completion other than the building permit has a deadline, right, Scott? But like the landscaping and everything, it's usually the thing that holds the applicant to completion is the letter. They want their letter of credit back.
But I'm wondering how long it would have dragged, because I think what should have happened was when his first landscaper backed out, he could have informed us to let us know that there was difficulty, instead of I and my neighbor having to bring it forward, saying, hey, what's going on here? So I think I have to put it out there.
I would just say those are good points as far as the process goes, but as far as a particular agenda item and the motion on the table, it's outside that scope. So we're looking for next part of the meeting is to approve or deny the motion as presented, right?
I'll approve it. Just that I feel if I've got the opportunity, I'm going to squeeze it in.
That's fine. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. All right, motion carries. So Mayor Atwell, you're on for item 10 forward. Thank you
Great.
for coming.
Thank you for covering for me, Mr. Iker. Okay, number 10, new business. Discussion on possible action on the following items. 10A, DLC 0733994001, DLC 073994, DLC 07339995. 3185 Hill Road, owner Divine Redeemer Lutheran Church, applicant Matthew Marinig. Applicant is requesting a certified survey map to combine 3 lots of record.
Okay, so the applicant, are you representing the project?
Come on up.
Matt is not here.
We're used to seeing Matt. Name and address?
Adam Wolf, 321 Parkside, Whitewater.
Okay, did you say your first name's Adam?
Yes.
Adam Wolf, and what's your address, please, again?
321 Parkside.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Amy, can you give us an overview, please?
Okay, so Plan Commission discussed the conditional use for the Divine Redeemer daycare last month. And they are finalizing the engineering before they take that to Public Works, and Public Works review is required before they go to Common Council. So the application for the conditional use still hasn't made its way to Common Council, just so you know. But as part of the overall process, and one of the conditions of the CU actually, is that the applicant combine the lots through a certified survey map, so on page 31, if you want to go to it. They had to combine the 3 parcels. So right now, or as proposed with the improvements, there'll be, a structure will go over 1 lot line, the parking lot goes over the lot line, so they're gonna clean it up, which is great. But there are just a few conditions in the report, I won't go through them all. I have some minor planner comments. The surveyor has some minor notes and comments that have to be addressed. The engineer's comments, the one that is important and we'll definitely want to make sure gets incorporated before this advances, because I think it's still a pending issue, is that they need to show the sanitary sewer and water easements that they're going to put into place. Those should be illustrated on the CSM. So it's my understanding the applicant's working with their engineer right now to identify the appropriate locations. That's what's kind of holding up the Public Works review as well. So as soon as that gets done, that'll be shown on here, the notes will be addressed, and then we'll, if you recommend approval, it would be advanced to Common Council in compliance with all of the planner, engineer, and surveyor comments. One comment, we talked about the signage.
Yep.
I did talk to the city attorney, and he recommended we work through a text amendment, which is something that we could get through, but that it shouldn't be tied to this CSM
We can't tie it to
document.
it?
That we should do it through a text, move forward at a future date with a text amendment.
Okay. Just to bring up to speed, I thought maybe this might be an opportunity as part of this approval that we could tie in there that this was 3 lots, and attempt to grandfather in or approve at this time, having 2 signs instead of 1, which would only be allowed once it's all combined. But apparently the city attorney said this is not a good time to try to solve that problem.
It was a very good idea. But he recommended we advance so I think the applicant, they're gonna go through a whole construction process, and it will take several months. The city attorney's recommended that we go through a text amendment and come up with some provisions that would allow this particular situation to take place.
All right, do you have anything to add, or?
Sure.
All right, any questions of the applicant, of the planner, or of the applicant, commissioners? All right, then looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion to recommend approval of certified survey map subject to city planner, engineer, surveyor comments being addressed prior to the common council review and approval.
I'll second.
I'm sorry, oh, thank you.
All righty, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
One step further. All right, 10B, DLC 075599990142310 Hirschman Lane, owner and applicant Robert and Danielle Kallenberger. Applicant is requesting site plan and appearance approval of an accessory building addition that exceeds the size requirements. If you'd like to come on up and rattle off your names and addresses one more time.
Robert Gallenberger, 2310 Hirschman Lane.
I'm sorry, the address again?
2310 Hirschman Lane.
Thank you.
And if you could give yours too, just.
Danielle Kellenberger, 2310 Hirschman Lane.
Alrighty, Amy, you want to start us off?
Okay, so on page 37, there should be a site plan. This property is on, well, as the applicants have stated, Hirschman Lane. It's in the east side of the city, north of Oakwood Road and the park. So the property currently has a residence. There's also a large detached garage. There's pictures in the packet. It's a 1,200 square foot detached garage. And then they have an existing pole building at 720 square feet. So they're proposing to add on 1,020 square feet to that pole building, which that structure alone will equate to 1,740 square feet. So if you put the two accessory structures together, it's a total of 2,940 square feet. And the way the code reads is you're allowed to have a 1,200 square foot building, one 1,200 square foot building, and then one 240 square foot building. So since they already have that 1,200 square foot garage, they would really be asking to increase the allowable 240 square foot structure. Any structure that exceeds 1,200 square feet, and that includes the sheds that can go up to 240 square feet, do require Plan Commission approval in compliance with the site plan criteria. So some of the criteria to consider would be that the uses need to be incidental to the principal use. The applicant is stating that the building will be used for the storage of vehicles and yard tool storage, which is the same as the existing building. And then garden items, lawnmowers, tractor with bucket, pop-up camper, patio furniture, holiday decorations, etc. Architecture can be looked at as far as quality and compatibility with the neighborhood. And the materials of the structure should either be similar to the existing structures on the property or be harmonious and attractive and cohesive. So that's what you'll want to consider in your review. You may know I did have on my screen, which isn't usable right now, about I don't know, 6 months ago, maybe a year ago, you reviewed and approved outbuilding for Swearington, kind of in the similar area on Nagawicka Road. And they also had pretty large structures. So they had an existing 2,000 square foot outbuilding, and then, or I'm sorry, they had a 2,000 square foot outbuilding. They added 1,296 square feet, which was a total of 3,296 square feet of accessory structures. And then they also had a detached garage too. I'm not sure what the size of the other detached garage is. Keep this application and that in mind. We are going to talk about this separately as a text amendment agenda item. However, with that said, their application needs to be considered with the current code, the way the current code reads and the criteria that I had previously mentioned. So my recommendation would be that it's up to your discretion whether or not you want to approve the application, but if you do, I do have 5 conditions that I'm recommending, including that it can't be used for human habitation or commercial purposes, and it shall not be used for an event facility and be used for personal purposes only. The building shall not be rented out, and no further land divisions are permitted, which is actually stated in the code that when the Plan Commission approves this, they can require a deed restriction prohibiting land divisions. And they would need a full to scale site survey. So they had submitted several surveys. They're not to scale, so some are a little misleading compared to others, and then one of them actually appears that it's off-site. So they definitely need to get a scaled site plan that shows the location of the buildings, and that building would need to comply with all the RE3 standards, and then a deed restriction would be recorded with all of these conditions.
So what do you need all the extra room for? You seem to already have a lot of room for the items that you're talking about, and now you need more room. And
Can I answer that one?
yeah, and you're asking for basically
Going under the bus here.
square footage wise, you're I don't know, approximately doubling at least the first floor area of your house.
He's first of all already in the 5-car garage.
If you could please kind of talk into the microphone. Oh,
You just turned it off.
yeah. There you go. Thank
Talk
you.
into the mic.
Just look into it.
Okay. First of all, the 5-car garage is filled with classic cars that he is using as a legacy for our children. And this space, essentially what I want to see is our driveway not being full of plow trucks and trailers and things that he has sitting out there, because I prefer to have a clean looking yard. And the other thought that I have is, up until last year, our neighbor to the west of us had trees lining the road. So I'm from Nagawicka, you couldn't see our yard. Now you can. And every time I drive by Nagawicka and look at our yard, I can't stand the look of it. So I wanted a nice, presentable building there, and I want to hide the plow truck. Now he can go.
Well, pop-up campers out there, I gotta move everything, get lawnmowers out, something's stuffed in that 5-car garage, I can't get anything out of it. I have a disease with cars, I think.
As a legacy for our children.
Okay.
Amy, you said there was a similar approval. Was that on 3 acres also nearby?
How big was the swearing?
It was larger because it's on septic, so I think it's 5 acres.
That was horses, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah,
that
I was
was
gonna, I
horses.
couldn't remember if it was horses or not, but yeah, I think it was
Yeah, a
horses.
portion of it was, horse facility, and a portion of it's a very fancy garage with, yeah.
So is this adding on to that second accessory building?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. So it's gonna be like an L?
The existing one is like a red and white right now, and it looks very.
It's very run down right now.
You're gonna swallow it and put a new facade
There you
on?
go.
I mean, you're putting a
Yeah.
new facade on, you're creating an L-shaped building?
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah, you might want to, Mike, if you want to put
There's
Tim's
pictures of
screen
the red
back
one that's
on.
falling apart
Yeah,
in there.
there's quite a few pictures
There we
in
go.
the packet.
Yeah.
Right now, it's a red
The piece
pole
there that
gun.
had the windows is the new piece. The one with the door is what's there existing today.
Yeah, it's on.
But in the pictures, they all
the
match.
picture.
Are they
Turn the
all gonna
picture.
match when
Yeah,
it's
this
done?
one is-
Correct.
yeah.
Okay.
Oh, boy.
And the reason I wanted all the windows was, again, because you can see it from Nagawicka, and I think a regular pole barn is kind of an eyesore. So I would like to see it look better from the street.
Just more presentable to the neighbors.
Yeah.
It'll look a lot nicer. And let light it, because we're not gonna put a lot of electric in it.
Is the entire building one floor?
Correct.
Yes.
And it is an open floor
Open,
space.
totally 100% open, and it's a vaulted ceiling. That's why there's windows up on the top to let more light in.
Which way will it face, north or south?
Pardon me?
Which way does that building, the windows then face?
West.
West?
The windows are west, yes.
To Nagawicka, when people drive Nagawicka, they can see it then.
Right.
Yeah, you can have a lot of sunlight coming in, fading everything.
And we're trying to make it look nice for the neighbors, because that's where the neighbors all can see from the back, the south and the west, and then the street people can see a nice looking building. And the red one right now is really run down
The red one does have big sliding doors though on it.
in the front.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. I can't get
Like
cars
barn
in
doors.
otherwise. Yeah.
Like barn doors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Will you make this the same color as the garage?
No.
No, it's gonna be
This is
different.
Black, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the garage is white.
Actually, this is charcoal with black trim and white doors.
See, is it gonna have any kind of lighting on it? Any kind of lighting on the building?
In it or on it?
On the building?
No.
I guess I'm in favor of it. I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Motion to approve the building addition to the Kallenberger property as presented this evening, and in accordance with the list of items the city planner has in our packet this evening.
I'll second.
Is there any further discussion?
Well, I'll bring up a different precedent. There's a property just north of Carriage Hills, and this goes back a ways, but there's someone who is a car collector who deals in Pontiacs. And
Not the ambulance guy?
the ambulance, they were Pontiac, some were ambulances, and you know, and it was not a, I think he had a size that was reasonable based on his property, but there was complaints just about the aesthetics. Well, he put his hobby inside, and that's like what you're trying to do, and you've got a nice tree line too between you and your neighbors. I think
I think on 3 acres.
it's an
If
appropriate,
it was 2 acres, probably not.
based on, yeah, so anyways,
Yeah, to the east, within that 30-feet lot line, it's all heavily wooded trees, so they can't even see it from
Yeah, no.
from that way.
And I think
Thanks
having
thanks
those
for being honest
deeds
about it.
restrictions
Absolutely.
are important in there because you may plan to live there for the rest of your lives, but someday it's gonna sell. And someday somebody's gonna wanna do something else with that property.
I'm gonna die there, and my daughter's gonna.
We actually already have
Sorry, I
our
love
daughter-
Delafield, I'm not going nowhere.
All right.
And our daughter is gonna take over the house and pay off her brothers. It's already in the plan.
So I really like the planner's ideas of the different deed restrictions that we have in there that helps control it over time, regardless of who owns it.
Well put.
And I'm sorry, what's the timeline you're estimating for
The
this?
builder's supposed to start October. He claims 2 weeks, but I don't believe it, probably be a little longer. And that's for seeing no trouble where they're backed up with their other jobs.
Gotcha. All right, is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes.
Should I have said aye in that too?
Well, you can, I'm not sure it counts though.
You saved a marriage.
And now, in regards to your question or your statement before, I'm a Chevy guy, she's the Pontiac lover. So
And one of them's still alive.
Yeah, I found it was interesting. You immediately pointed to her as to why this was needed, but the root cause of it is you.
Exactly. I want it, but he's the cause.
you are a troublemaker.
All right, well, thank you very
Appreciate it.
much.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Okay, number 11, comprehensive plan zoning and ordinance revisions. A, discussion and possible action to remove or amend sections of Article 1 of the City of Delafield zoning ordinance, including Section 52-16D, yard projections, and 52-21, street access requirements. Article 3, plans of operations. Article 10, administration and penalties. And Article 9, zoning districts, or I'm sorry, Article 4, zoning districts and possible other related sections. Okay, here we go, Amy.
All right. Let's just kick it off. You guys know what we're doing. So we're proposing to kind of wrap up Article 1 for now. There might be changes that come forward as we move through the code, but this is the last touch of Article 1, really. And actually, the whole report tonight is, for the most part, most of what we're going to finish up for this year, and then there's some big topics that will be presented next year. So, starting with yard projections, there's just a section 5216D, and we're really, Scott and I went through this, we're really just cleaning it up. So there's references to different types of yards. The section includes everything, whether it's front, side, rear, corner, it applies to all of them. And it's a allowance for certain architectural features or appurtenances to structures that can extend into those setbacks. So some staircases, landings, awning type structures, et cetera. So one thing that we're adding is it says, depending on the type of structure, you can extend it 6 feet from the structure or 2 feet from the structure. We're saying that in no case can it extend closer than 5 feet to a lot line. So right now, there's no cap, and it is being capped at 5 feet from the lot line. That doesn't mean you necessarily get to go that close. If the normal setback is 30 feet, then you're not going to get that far. We also removed a section. The number 6 is being removed because it's now that we changed it to all setbacks, it's just a duplicative statement in that it says yard projections listed above may project into any required rear yard the same distance they are permitted into a front yard. Well, we're already saying that above. And then number 5, we're proposing to delete 2 because it's kind of a complicated calculation about how the appurtenances can't exceed 1/5 of the area when there's a statement above that where they can't exceed 1/3 of the length of the building. So we're just trying to keep the two consistent with each other. One was for front and side, and the other was for side. So they actually conflicted with each other to begin with. Any questions on yard projections? Pretty minor stuff, other than the cap of 5 feet. It's probably the biggest thing.
So as it reads, the number 3, it says uncovered stair, necessary landings may project into a distance not to exceed 6 feet.
Yep.
So
Into setback,
what? Into a setback?
Yes.
And so, but
a distance not to exceed
so
6 feet.
it can project into a setback as much as 6 feet.
But it has to be 5 feet, so that
No
might
matter
mean
what,
3.
it has to be 5 feet from the lot line.
Yes.
No matter what. Okay. All right. Just checking.
And I started out by writing no more than 5 feet in every one of these, but you kind of want to try to avoid that duplication, so it's up front in the in the main statement.
In no case, gotcha, okay, all right. I'm just, between the red and the black, okay.
Yep.
Got it.
Okay, then.
Makes it way simpler.
Simpler, shorter. Street access requirements. This one, we don't have the perfect language down, so I'll explain it, and then the city attorney's gonna take a crack at it before next month's meeting. But essentially what this is saying is that if somebody proposes to build a structure on a lot that doesn't abut a public road, they need to first go to Plan Commission to get approval. I don't know if that has been done historically, but that is what the code says. And then it has minimum easement requirements. And so really what you're looking for is to make sure that before you approve a building, that people have appropriate access to their site. A new lot wouldn't be created, not abutting a public road, unless you approved it anyway. So you would approve the fact that they're going to put a building, a lot not abutting a public road, and make sure they have appropriate easements all at the same time. But this is really for existing lots that don't abut a public road. So in that paragraph, it talks about it has to be at least 30 feet wide if it's one lot and 60 feet wide if it serves 2 or more lots, which that is a common provision in codes. It kind of, it's similar to a half street or a full street right of way. However, Scott and I were scrolling through the GIS, and probably where you have the most, where this occurs most frequently is along the lakes. There's the area on the south side, just north of Milwaukee Street, where there's these private strips and then there's a cluster of lots. Well, they're never gonna get 30 and 60-foot wide easements. So we just wanna make sure, maybe there'll be something written in there, that the Plan Commission has the authority to approve a narrower easement if it's impractical. We want to provide a minimum provision, impractical or something, I don't know. And then the other thing, B, which I'm noticing in my report to you that I didn't include the last sentence, which is the important sentence. It talks about how if somebody were to propose a detached structure or an accessory structure to a lot that doesn't abut a public road, they can do that without going to Plan Commission if there's already a house on the lot. So it's really just making improvements, which makes sense. You're adding some improvements, but the house is already there, the main use. But it says if that's done, then that accessory structure is considered a non-conforming use. And I just don't think that legally makes sense. So we're gonna have the attorney take a look at that too, and that might just get taken out. So I think I got ahead of myself and deleted it before. But I wrote in here that it was existing language, so I want to make sure I make that clear to you, that it does not include the last sentence. Then, moving on to Article 3, Plans of Operations. We talked about this a while ago, and that is to allow...
If we can go back to that other one
sorry.
first. Scott, I'm just being caught by the word boathouse here, that the erection or attachment of I'll just jump to boathouse.
I
Is
don't
that-
see that. Where do you see?
B? B? 52-21B? I'm just trying to imagine where, an example of where we've attached a boathouse to an existing house or where that might even be possible.
I think they're just using the words poorly, so we can clean that up. That's just a poor use of words.
I think we don't want to prohibit accessory structures on a lot that's not on a road if there's already a house there.
Right, that's what it's trying to say. Erection or attachment, that's just poor choice of words.
Okay.
There isn't gonna be a boathouse attached to a house.
Good.
Interesting.
You call it that.
Yeah, that's small enough.
That's my boathouse. There's a boat in it.
I mean, I do know of one circumstance on the lake where they could have done, but they didn't when they built it, so.
There probably are.
Might have been a reason why it's in there, but hopefully we don't ever face it.
It shouldn't be done. A new boathouse should not be built attached to a house. It wouldn't come,
We've also learned if we don't put it down, somebody's gonna try.
Yeah.
You'd be expanding the principal structure, right? I mean, so then,
There's one where I used to live on the channel on the west side where the boathouse is under the house. He's got
Yeah.
a track and
Nice.
brings the boat right in.
Some of the old lots have that. I think, Mike, it'll get cleaned up to say, I think it is meant to say like an attached garage, carport, or accessory structure such as a boathouse, shed, whatever, outbuilding. Okay, plans of operations, any other questions on that? Plans of operation, a while ago, we talked about how if somebody's proposing a business name, operator, or property owner change, and that's it, and everything else stays the same, that they wouldn't have to come to Plan Commission, that it could just be approved administratively. So the paragraph, it might be wordy, I'll have Michael, or your attorney, take a look at it, is to say that they still have to submit all of the forms and applications, because what's really important there is when they submit a BPO, it's not even included in your meeting packets, but they include all their contact information for the police department and the fire department, for emergency situations, and then we have all their contact information, and they can also say that they are not making any changes to the operation, and we can verify that. But the idea would be to review that as staff and not have to bring it to Plan Commission. So it's just saying they have to apply and get a business plan of operation, but they don't have to come here.
So for a name change only, they don't have to come here.
And I'll give you an example. Applebee's just called a couple months ago, and they have a business entity name change, and the contact people are changing, but it's still Applebee's. The property owner is still the same. So most people, actually, we're grateful that they even called, because some people wouldn't call. But they had to, because they're a restaurant, so Molly has to issue a new liquor license. But that's something that really could just be documented with staff.
Could we have that as a part of make sure that by our code, that it's included in the report of city officials? So like, with the planner or building inspector or wherever, and in our, one of the last things we go over, to have that just as a note. And I mean, we were going from having it approved to not having it reported to the plan commission.
Oh,
know what
you
I
mean a
mean?
report in
Just
the agenda?
Have it actually published in the agenda as a formal
Yeah.
item so that it hits public eyes.
Yeah, do you want it?
I mean, the only one, it's not really that there'd be any reason not to approve it by staff, but just,
Yeah.
it's like, boy,
Report it.
this person owns 90% of the properties now, and they're running all the businesses. I mean, that's kind of a public interest to understand who owns what where.
What we could do is say, I could change it to acknowledged by Plan Commission, however, approval is not required, something like that.
Yeah, included in the
Next meeting.
next meetings.
Planner's report.
Planner's report and minutes, let's say.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why I think that's.
No, that's
worthy of
fair.
Public, we're going from,
Transparency.
right
Transparency
under
in
our
everything
thumb
we
to
do.
gone. And I think let's transition away from it if we need to, but.
That's fair, and it's good to put it in the code, otherwise, over time, that might get lost, that needs to be done.
Still might.
And then right now, it says that exemptions include public schools and municipal offices. We're taking out public schools and limiting it to municipal offices, because the city still wants to be aware of a same kind of thing, all the contact information for school, and we want to know their number of employees, hours of operation, do they meet parking, what do they all have going on that site. Now, there are several schools, they may or may not have plan of operations, and that is what it is. They legally exist, but any future program or change is going to have to go through the Plan Commission. And then as far as what is submitted, I just added a few things that are often missed by applicants. An interior floor plan of the tenant space. I don't have it on here, but the plot plan, I'll put a scaled, well, I don't even know if that's necessary. That's fine. Plot plan for multi-tenant buildings. Interior floor plan for tenant space, and then a narrative explaining the operation, including types of indoor and outdoor uses, products, or services offered. A lot of times they don't include, we have to ask them, what exactly is your business? Like, especially these financial businesses, their name doesn't exactly tell it all. Any questions on that? Anything missing? So those items we just all went over, I would like, if you're comfortable, to set up a public hearing for the August meeting. And if things need to be tweaked as part of that public hearing, we can do that. But we'll present specific language to you at the meeting. And then I do want to go over some other items that I don't think we're going to be quite ready for a public hearing. But you want me to I'll move forward on that? Just
I'm wondering if we should make the motion now.
Go ahead.
So per Amy's comments there, I guess we're looking for a motion to take those 3 items and schedule a public hearing.
I'll make a motion to schedule a public hearing for, look for August?
August Plan Commission meeting for Article 1 and 3.
Yeah, yes, so I will make a motion to approve a public hearing for August, next Plan Commission meeting for Articles 1 and 3.
I'll second.
Yeah.
All right, any further discussion on that topic? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes.
Okay. So zoning districts, moving on to Article 4. There's a permitted use in all districts section. It's really short, easily missed, quite frankly. So I'm proposing that it gets removed altogether. And what it says is that the following uses are approved in all districts, right? That's not exactly what it says. It says in all districts, no building or premises shall be used, and no building shall hereafter be erected, moved, or structurally altered unless otherwise provided in this chapter, except for one or more of the following uses. Railroad rights-of-way and passenger depots, not including switching, storing, freight yards, or siding. I'm proposing to remove that, which means it's not going to be mentioned in the code. So unless you amend the text otherwise, it's probably going to be prohibited unless there's a statute that allows it. Or you can move it to the conditional use section, but it's kind of a random thing to just allow by right in a general section. And the other one is the churches, rectories, parsonages, parish houses, synagogues as conditional uses, subject to the provisions of Article 5. Well, that should just be moved to the CU section like the rest of the conditional uses. That could actually get missed, tucked away in here instead of being in the CU section. So I guess the only question with that is, I can certainly move it into the CU section, but would you want any minimum provisions to go along with it? Kind of like the senior living, sometimes having some measurable conditions are beneficial.
What would be some, I'm having a hard time coming up with an
So
example.
the only things, like it used to be that you had, some municipalities would have that you have to have a certain size because they usually take up a lot of land, but now churches have become so diverse and they're in multi-tenant buildings and they're in small spaces, so that one's probably tricky.
So you'd say I'm not saying we would, but I'm just saying an example would be, churches on conditional uses on lots 5 acres or more.
Yeah, you could do that. You could say double the offset if it's adjacent to a residential district. I've seen that. Or 50 feet from a lot line if it's adjacent to a residential district. Some codes I've seen have a allowance for extra height because churches are often taller structures. So, what is the height right now? Is most districts like 35 feet? I mean, the city's code is pretty lenient at that, but because it's a averaged measurement.
I think that in the interest of time, I think it'd be best to just remove this whole thing. Allowing it as a conditional use in any district is a pretty open slate, and I think that it might be best for the future, if we were presented with somebody who had a use case that said, this is really what I want to do, and I can't believe you guys don't allow it in your city, and then go through the process of approving a conditional use then, as opposed to trying to anticipate what that might be and just trying to establish conditions for all the different districts. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you
I
mean.
think redlining it entirely and not moving it, and especially because of how the laws on conditional uses changed 8 years ago, or whenever it was.
So I think for the railroad rights of way, that one easily take it out because it's probably not ever gonna happen. But the churches, just know, like you could get a church application tomorrow. It's a pretty potentially common request.
Is that the
When
only
you
way
have
that
a
we
couple-
had?
They're
Is that the
all
only way
supposed
you can get a church in here? That's the only reference of a church? Or
is through conditional use in all
but it's not,
districts.
that's not as a public institution or some other institutional
I'll
use?
gotta
have to
be.
look. I think it,
It's gotta
well,
be.
I mean, because you had to go find
You might have to
this
zone, you have
determine
to
that you
change
could
it to
even apply.
P1 or something, but,
I'm not trying to be
I
combative.
don't
I'm just
know.
surprised that we couldn't. Because we had a very substantial church application up on Indian Springs Road that was close. I mean, they were really.
True, yeah.
And I'd be surprised. Maybe it was that this is just the only way that it was even on the docket, but it seems odd to
well,
me.
so just this section alone would indicate that it needs a CU because it says they're allowed in all districts as conditional uses. So even if it's listed, like this is a, poor statement then, but let me look quick.
It's gotta be.
know,
I
would
swear
be
I've seen it
shocked if
someplace
there
else.
isn't.
For now, that would actually be a good thing because then PI or semi-public's usually used for, those are kind of spot zone because they're so particular in where they are. And then you have full discretion
Right.
because it's a rezone. It's
Right.
probably gonna be a rezone.
and I prefer
think
that,
that'd be the-
frankly.
So you could put it in as a permitted use, even if it's not, put it in as a permitted use in P1 and call it a day. But then they're,
I don't know.
they would be allowed in all P1 districts.
I'd rather have the control on this side of the table in the future than have it be, on the other side and be surprised at where something might turn up,
I agree with that
I mean,
completely.
if we move it into P1 as a conditional use and then leave it there, and then we can worry about we can try and find
Oh.
conditions there. I don't know, to say it's approvable in all districts, we could be in court instead of being in the driver's seat.
Right.
What do the
So-
other commissioners think about that? Any comments or sound good?
I think Tim's correct.
Yeah, and I would be surprised if that isn't in.
I swear.
P1, churches and seminaries.
Yeah. So you just have to change the zoning if you want the church.
So here, I mean, it's kind of weird.
We did have we
It's
had
in-
we had a church in the old opera house that just got changed, and that's, so I mean, we're kind of,
Yeah, yeah,
and
it's been done.
you could question whether what's in there now is in the church in some aspects of their business plan too. I mean, there's things that they advertise about spiritual healing and other stuff. So I don't know,
So here, like, this doesn't even, it's conflicting, really. So that one section's conflicting, but then even in P1, it's a permitted use, and then under the conditional use section, it says conditional uses must be publicly oriented, religious, utility, institutional, hospitals, sanitarium, nursing homes, funeral parlor, crematoria, columbarium. It's like, it's in both. So, we're not scheduling a public hearing next month, but what I'm hearing is you want it in P1. We need to figure out how to,
or determine why it belongs elsewhere, why it was where it was. I mean, I don't want to, I don't think we should all read in front of the cameras right now. Let's all do our research on churches where we, right? I mean,
well, right now, there's a church in, Grace Church is in M, is that M1?
I
Oh, that's true.
think it is M1.
M1. Elmbrook Church is, maybe that is P1.
I think so.
Yeah, maybe we should get a list of all the churches and see what they're currently zoned.
We did, I mean, we had one right around the corner for a couple years.
Yeah. And one at the school, too.
So more work to do on that one.
I think so.
Okay.
I was writing them all off, but I think, I don't want to be that guy.
I actually when they wanted to build the church over on Indian Springs, I went around to every church in Delafield. And I was stunned at where they all are.
Yeah, sure, okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
And some are in residential areas
Episcopalian,
and some aren't.
Presbyterian up here,
Yeah, there's a lot.
there's a
Areas
lot of
everywhere.
churches around.
Okay. We'll get that further defined. Then, permitted accessory uses in all residential districts. So there's a lot to talk about here. I'm going to skip the whole garage thing, which was the previous agenda item for now, and do what I think might be easier. So first, there's permitted accessory uses in all residential districts. There's a statement that lodging or boarding for not more than 2 lodgers or more than 2 boarders per dwelling unit who are not members of the family.
What number is that?
Number 3.
Lodging, boarding, or more than.
Do you want that in there?
What is, explain that a little bit. Is that involved?
Well, I think it's for fee, because, I mean, obviously you
Like
can have a
Airbnb?
family sleepover for the weekend or whatever,
Oh.
but
Because I know of one in Delafield where they rent out the house by the week.
that we aren't controlling at all right now.
I was wondering
This
if
is
that where
just
this
for
fell.
accessory use.
Accessory use.
I think this is meant to be like you're inviting people in for pay, for, I don't,
I just wonder how
150
you
years old.
enforce it.
Yeah, right.
Right.
How would you know?
How do you know if somebody's a family member or not?
Yeah. Or friend.
And what purpose does it serve?
Yeah,
I don't
that's a-
know.
That's a strange one.
so what I could do is test.
Nothing's coming to me as to what
And
purpose that
This is a use,
serves.
though, in your primary residence.
Yes.
Yeah,
That happens all over.
Yeah.
I mean,
If
we
you
had
wanna
we had
rent
a
out
former alderman that has renters, and it's not a rental it's not a business property, it's just see.
Yeah, if I want to
Lodgers.
if I
Yeah,
want to
live with them?
Airbnb my downstairs bedroom or something like that, how do you control that?
Right, no, I mean, I don't know that.
Who
needs-
police is not part of the family, I mean,
know.
um,
I think you're hearing strike it.
okay, and I can check with the attorney tomorrow, but I, you know,
Unless there's another reason why that we're not understanding, that doesn't seem to make sense.
right.
So what about the next one, model homes?
Okay, model homes, just so you all know. So here it's listed as a permitted accessory use. It also happens to be in the conditional use section. And in the conditional use section, there's several provisions, they're actually decent provisions. Like somebody needs to come in and tell us the hours that they would be open for people coming and going. They have to ensure that there's parking available, what have you. I would recommend that you remove it from the conditional use section and just have it be subject to a site plan review from Plan Commission, and that you put those criteria from the CU in the site, in this section for a site plan review. So that way you still get to look at it. You approved it for, it's in Miller Marriott's I don't know where it is, Declaration of Restrictions, I think. It specifically states what they can do, and they do need a business plan of operation. And they, no more than 5 years, I think. There's a couple of provisions.
But in the case of Miller Marriott, it's not an accessory use, it's the primary use. So I don't
But it-
understand who would ever put a model home as an accessory use? Just
Private builder, like a one-off guy?
But, so it'd be 2 houses, it'd be
Right.
the primary
It
house
is
and then an
kind of the permitted
accessory
little big
model
lot.
home. You'd have 2 homes on a,
No.
well, this is not how this
Hawthorne has
reads?
a model home.
I think it's meant to be like, it is the principal use. That's a good point, because it's not really an
I
accessory
think it
use.
just should be
It's the-
struck.
Yeah.
We could strike it. And then we address it with the subdivisions like we do. And then I would
Yeah.
strike it from the CU section too, which we're not touching the CU section right now, but.
Yeah.
Sounded like you did.
But for this section, I just can't imagine why it would be there.
Maybe we need to do that. It's on the agenda for 2024,
Okay.
but we'll see. Okay. Home occupations, there's a paragraph here. My only change would be to, instead of repeating portions of the definition, to refer to the definition, or we're gonna run into the same thing we did with that floor area ratio issue.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Signs is whatever, signs, as long as they comply with the sign section, I think that's fine. Boathouses, 1 per residential lake lot, it's fair. Private piers complying with chapter 30. And then number 9, that takes us back to the accessory structures. So number 9 is, refers to the exceptions, which is what you reviewed tonight. If you go over 1,200 square feet, there's exceptions. Going back to the accessory structures, it says private garages, 1 attached and/or 1 detached private garage per dwelling unit, no larger than 1,200 square feet in area. And then there's the utility buildings and accessory buildings, no larger than 240 square feet in area, no more than 1 permitted per lot. So, starting with that,
And so we just approved somebody tonight in excess of those numbers.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, first thing, identifying something as a garage versus another accessory building is very difficult.
Well, this guy told us he was putting cars in all of them.
Right. Either way,
Vehicles.
I think Scott and I would both agree, just calling them accessory buildings is also just fair game, because we don't know what they're putting in them.
Right.
If it's personal storage,
Workshop.
workshop, right? So, what a lot of codes have, I just want to talk about, so like the main things usually with accessory buildings are the number of accessory buildings allowed on a lot, which your code does, well, it does say one utility building and 1 garage. And then the size of the structures, whether it be each individual structure or you get an overall square footage for accessory structures, is usually laid out. And then the use of the structures has become a challenge in most municipalities, especially since COVID. People are converting, I mean, it's always been an issue, but it's gotten like way worse, where people
Way
are.
more common.
Way more common that people are turning accessory buildings into their studios, office space, workout areas.
Airbnbs.
Getaway places. I mean, that are getting pretty fancy. So what Scott's dealing with is the challenge of, should I be approving the full bathroom that's being proposed, the shower, toilet, sink?
And that bathroom is proposed next year after he builds it this year.
Yeah.
So
And the kitchenettes and the, I just had one in another municipality where it's somebody's office, and, you know, I just really want to be able to cook myself lunch while I'm in the outbuilding, and they have a full kitchen in their outbuilding. We also found a bed in there too, but, you know, they said it was an office. So, that's what we have to deal with. And then Scott's in this, like, what is it? Is it, you know, they say they're not living in it, but how do you know? So, I just want to start the conversation, and I don't know if, I think the easiest one is maybe the number of accessory structures that is reasonable. I mean, do you want, so having 1 240 and 1 1,200 square feet, I don't know if that's the best solution. Maybe it is. Maybe you only want to have 1 small, but what they have today are 2 huge structures. The one that was approved a couple months ago was 2 huge structures as well.
with a kitchenette, a full bath, a fireplace,
Yeah. So
says habitation written all over it.
do you want to keep
It's
it at,
it's being used to create down the road 2 homes.
Right, yeah.
or a bit, what often happens is they turn into businesses. So,
And they're not on foundations. They're, it's not good. Long-term, it's not good.
Yeah.
and having architectural controls is important, because when you get the giant Morton pole buildings, those are the ones that often turn into like construction businesses, equipment storage, landscape company type things.
Plow trucks.
And then when you get the one we had months ago with all the fancy stuff, that's where it's questionable on habitation. And I think their original request was a second living unit, and they changed their stance. So I guess with number of accessory buildings, I mean, does the plan commission overall support 2 accessory structures on a property?
How big is that property?
Any property? Well, I'm saying any property.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's almost like it should be tied to, is it
Yes.
a 1 acre lot, a 2 acre, a 3 acre
Right.
lot?
Yeah, like if they have
I mean,
5 acres, the size building that they want to put up doesn't seem unreasonable.
Or even on 1 acre, 2 smaller sheds maybe? instead
So
of
we could
just
spend
one.
hours
Well,
trying to come up with
yeah,
this
and
formula, and then at the end, we'll say, except where approved by the planning commission, which basically throws it all out the door anyhow.
Well, so I did a little research, and
Because
a lot of municipalities have caps on size, and there isn't always an exception. So like, this is the cap. Number of accessory structures, typically that you do see that they have an option to go to plan commission for more than 2 accessory structures. And the review is usually making sure that they're all in good shape and well-kept, and that they're compatible with the surroundings and architecturally pleasant with the homes. But size-wise, I'll just give you some comparison. You can keep the 1,200 and 240 if that's what you choose. But right now, there's just this very wide open scale of what that ends up resulting in. So like the town of Genesee has a range, depending on lot size, of allowing up to 500 square feet to 1,000 square feet, or 2% of the lot size if it's agricultural. So if you've got a huge lot, you could have several thousand square feet in accessory structures, but only up to 2 accessory structures. I think if you have more than 15 acres, you can have more accessory structures to accommodate an agricultural use. Town of Delafields was really kind of complicated and very restrictive. I'm not sure you want to go in that direction. They focused quite a bit on attached garages being a minimum of a certain size and not exceeding a 4-car stall. I think it was 1,400 or 1,600 square feet, and then pretty restrictive on the accessory structures. Village of Summit, which I'm familiar with, you can have up to 2 accessory structures. Each accessory structure can't exceed 60% of the floor area of the home. Or that can go to Plan Commission. They have the same challenge where they have people coming to Plan Commission frequently, and it's just this, it's not a consistent, fair answer at the end. The counties is a sliding scale based on the lot size. So if the lot's less than 14,000 square feet, you get 600 square feet total. If it's 14,000 square feet or greater, you get 750 square feet, or 2% of the lot size, whichever is greater. So like 3 acres would yield 2,613 square feet. What did I say, 3 acres? 2 acres is 1,742 square feet. Some communities bump that 2% to 3%, which increases it by about 1,000 square feet, depending on lot size. I mean, I'm familiar with the county's rules because I have been there for 18 years. That's not really a problem. There's no exception. You have to get a variance to exceed it.
That's what I like.
Yes.
I haven't really seen an issue.
I like the county's style, and then I don't want the ability to come to the planning commission for willy-nilly exceptions. And if you want the exceptions, then you go to where you have to prove hardship. And you have to demonstrate the hardship as to why you have to do it. In a bigger picture, I like that myself.
the county one?
The county
Yeah, I kind
one,
of like that county one too.
A maximum of 2 with a sliding scale based on lot size.
Yeah.
And then past that, it's a.
It's a hardship,
yep. So with the
which
county
is a
one.
very tough thing to pass.
Something to keep in mind with the county one is if it's 14,000 square feet or greater, it's 750 square feet or 2%, whichever is greater. 1 acre yields 871 square feet, so that may or may not be too restrictive for you for an total accessory structures.
That's pretty.
1 acre?
Yeah,
So it's RE1, that's a tight 3-car garage.
yeah, that's kind of
And
small.
we can tweak those numbers.
Accessory structure.
But the concept-wise,
Yeah,
I like the concept.
And if you could draft something, we can tweak it.
Yeah, so I can give you that, and then I did look up, did I say that already? Oh, Town of Genesee, they have their scale I wonder what they have for 1 acre. It might say 1,000 square feet instead of 800 and something. Village of Wales, I'm on their plan commission, we just talked about it there too. Scott is their building inspector.
1,000 per acre, and then that's an easy math equation, right?
Village of Wales is what, 750 square feet total?
720.
Village-wide.
You guys can ping pong this one back and forth. Well, the city of Delafield.
Yeah. Wales has no interest in changing that number.
But they create exceptions all the time.
Well, I'll tell you though, that here, we don't have the problem with oversized accessory buildings in like RL2 or R1, R2, R3. Those are all smaller lots. The floor area ratio pretty much
Yeah, they want it in their house.
regulates that on its own. It's the RE1, RE2, RE3, which it's more appropriate. RE1, the setbacks, minimum setbacks are 20 feet, side and rear. RE2 and 3 are 30 feet. So that's a big deal. If you're gonna approve an oversized building and it's 30 feet away, it's not as offensive as RL2 that's 8 feet away. So
Sure.
I don't think we have I think the smaller lots, it regulates itself. Our code regulates
Yeah.
itself because of floor area ratio.
Okay, the use, that's a tough
Yeah.
one. That is a tough one everywhere. Do you want to put any restrictive provisions in place to control the use?
I think we need more than we have.
Yes, yes.
I think
Usually
you're gonna
plumbing.
regulate use by regulating plumbing, not prohibiting, but regulating. A half a bath might be okay. A sink is okay. When you get into showers and tubs and full baths, you're asking for full-blown habitable
kitchens.
space.
So what we do in Summit, it's a policy, we allow a sink and toilet or a sink and a kitchenette, but not two sinks, no showers, and they have to record a deed restriction that states they won't use it for human habitation
I like recording the
purposes.
deed restriction being part of the code.
I
Yeah.
agree, so that when it transfers, everybody knows about it.
Yep.
Buyer beware.
You want us to draft that for next month and you can tweak it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Just don't want two houses on the lot.
right.
And that second house is substandard. It's really a problem. And it's really a problem 20 years from now when it's leaning and being used. So I'm glad we're
Well,
addressing it.
doesn't it kind of go into a safety issue for the
It
humans
does,
there?
absolutely.
The teenager turns into a 35-year-old pretty quick.
Exactly.
Well, that's what you want.
Yeah,
though.
yes. Well, and I do think that that's very much a scenario that is occurring more and more too with housing getting so expensive. So all of those things are, and in-law units, and there might be a time where maybe you actually want to accommodate all of these things. You just have to put some thought into it. Okay? Did I miss anything else? Let's see, and then we've got, keeping of chickens, I wasn't gonna touch that at all, that just,
Please,
I wrote that.
please.
it's so well written.
How
that
many,
we
I
don't
think
need
we've
to
had
touch-
0 complaints on chickens, is that
good to
right,
me.
Mr. Oh, that's right, we don't have anybody in
That
charge
was
of the
13
chickens.
years ago. It's all good.
Article 10,
Ones
administration,
Bunny the Fox have gotten.
I've got chickens.
Article
He
10.
wrote it, I voted against it.
Okay, so I'm also having Scott and Michael review Article 10. It's administration penalties. There just might be some statutory provisions that need to change. There's also, right now, under public hearing notice, we notice out 300 feet for rezones and conditional uses, but 100 feet for Board of Appeals, which is, those are the minimum requirements per statutes, but a lot of communities notice out 300 feet for Board of Appeals as well. I am recommending we change it. There's been a lot of discussion about being as transparent and reaching as many people as possible during these proposals. It helps you get at least, a lot of times, at least one more property beyond one adjacent property beyond. And then it's consistent so that staff isn't thinking about which one applies. So that's
Makes
one
sense.
thought.
Makes sense to me.
And then there's this random provision that I'm having Michael, I want to have Michael look at. It's a yard and open space variance, and it says variances granted by the Board of Appeals may not exceed 40% of any one or more of the above requirements, which would be the standards. That's what it's intending, like any standard. If you have 40, allow 20% floor area ratio, you can't exceed that by 40%. And then it's got things in here about The applicant for the variance has offered in good faith to purchase at a fair price adjacent lands to minimum the degree of variance unless such offer, if made, would obviously be useless or unavailing. I don't think the city
Why
can.
would that all be in there?
The city can't dictate that. And these other things, I don't think legally, I don't think you can say that there's a maximum variance. That's why they have the opportunity to go to the Board of Appeals to let the board decide. So I'm gonna have Michael look at that. There's 3 statements in that section.
I'm sorry, what's the title of that section again?
Yard and open space variance. And then there's minimum standards that must be met if you go for a variance.
I mean, it's on the list, so we must have had an issue with it, but I'm not recalling it.
Well, it was probably written a while ago when the statutes were a lot looser, but they're not.
Why do we need that?
No, just kill it.
So just remove the whole
Kill
thing
it.
and you're all okay. So that's what I was thinking,
Let's
just
talk
completely
to the
getting rid of
attorney.
it.
Let's do his
Just
work.
do it. That's
We're
fine.
cheaper.
Understatement.
Well, obviously, somebody put some thought into this, because they're very specific conditions,
Well,
so I
I'm
don't want
trying
to just break
think of
them out.
when would we have ever used it?
Not all
but-
thoughts are
When you
good.
gave variances out monthly. There used to be a time. So this was trying to cap it.
Well, that's all she wrote for tonight, so any other comments? Otherwise, we'll just come back again.
All right, well, that took a little less time than I thought. Good job. Okay, number 12, report of city officials. A, planning commission meeting dates and deadlines. Regular meeting is August 30th, 2023, starting at 7 p.m. Regular meeting submittal deadline is August 7th, 2023.
August 2nd. Is that what you said? I thought you said 7.
Second.
Oh, sorry.
Second. Okay. B, correspondence, seeing none. C, planner, any additional comments?
Nope.
D, building inspector, good news.
Nothing to report. That's good news.
Well, new home occupancies is always good news. Okay, number 13, adjourn. Seeing no further business at 12:25.